And welcome back to SA Sports Show. It's my little segment, Blast from the Past. Of course, last week we had a fantastic chat with Johnny Letts. We've brought him back in the studio, which I'm absolutely over the moon about, because to me, it is SA sporting royalty. Johnny, welcome back.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be here.
I just want to recap, even though I know we had so many fantastic viewers that watched the show, which is brilliant. Apprenticeship at 16, we've had over 2,000 wins.
Yep.
We just touched on that first win of the Melbourne Cup. Your three, we spoke very briefly about the 3 Adelaide Cup wins and many, many more. Do we recap that first win of the Melbourne Cup of Piping Lane, which I think people can probably go back and view, because I want to talk about the second win now in 1980?
Yes.
Wow. Because it was your first ever Melbourne Cup and you've had a win.
Yes,
and now we go to 1980 and you've had in
72 was that my first one.
Yep, and so we're talking 8 years later.
8 years,
and
yep.
Belledale Ball.
Belledale Ball.
Fantastic. Tough race.
The satisfaction I got out of that, and you'll understand this because you've had good friends go into coaching and you'd love to win a grand final for them.
Oh, of course.
As a mate or a friend or a supporter.
Yep.
Colin Hayes had never won a Melbourne Cup. And I'm riding in the Melbourne Cup for him. And I won his first Melbourne Cup.
You've won his first, Colin Hayes' Melbourne Cup. We spoke previously about, training at Semaphore with Colin Hayes and all these other Australian champions of the horsey industry. So you've actually were on the horse that won Colin Hayes' first Melbourne Cup. Yeah,
and I went to Melbourne to ride a horse for Johnny Hawkes in the Cox Plate.
Right.
And Colin Hayes put me on a horse in the Moonee Valley Cup. And he said, I want you to ride this mare, John. He said, and tell me what you think of her. Well, she ran last, actually, because she did hurt her. She ran a nail into her hoof in the mounting yard, but it wasn't an injury that she wasn't lame or anything. And they said, take her to the barrier. They were going to scratch her in the mounting yard. And this is how lucky I was to win the second Melbourne Cup. Take her to the barrier, and if John thinks she's sore, scratch her at the gate in the Moonee Valley Cup. So I get round the gate, she drew one, and, I kept trotting around. She was good as gold.
Yeah.
She was good as gold. And I finished up running third on the fence, and I had 2 horses in front of me. I was just behind the leaders, and one outside of me, and I sat there all the way, and I faded in the straight and ran last. Anyway, when I come in, I came in and I said to Colin Hayes, he said, what do you think, John? I said, CS, she's not sore, but the class is not there. They were just too classy.
Yeah,
he said, oh, right. I said, you had a horse in that, because I didn't know what the horse was. I said, you had a horse that Roy rode, Roy Higgins. Yeah. I said, sat outside the leader. I said, what was that horse? He said, it's a horse called Belledale Ball. Robert Sangster owns him. Now, Robert Sangster was the biggest owner in the world.
Right.
And I said, have you got him in the Melbourne Cup? Yes, sometimes, Greg, you think to yourself, someone up there is looking after you.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is what happened.
Just all the pieces fell together. Yeah.
And they pointed at this horse to me, whoever was up there. And I said, what's his name? He said, his name's Belledale Ball. Yeah. I said, you got him in the Melbourne Cup? He said, yeah. I said, I want to ride him. He said, no, you don't. He said, you ride a horse called Gay Trebo. He said, he's won his last 4. Yeah. He said, he's got a good chance in the Cup. I said, CS, I want to ride that horse. If I don't ride him, I'm riding a horse that just won the Sydney Cup called Love Bandit. Yeah. And he said, I'll give you till tomorrow to make up your mind, but I'd suggest Gay Trebo. Yep. Anyway, next morning, get up and CS rings up and he said, what have you decided on? I said, Belledale Ball or none of yours. Wow. And I said to Roy Higgins at the races on the Saturday after, I said to Higgs, I said, Belledale Ball. He said, what about him? I said, you rode him in the Moonee Valley Cup. I said, I've taken a ride on him in the Melbourne Cup. He said, no. I said, you told me Piping Lane would win a country handicap. I said, and he won a Melbourne Cup. I said, you're a real good judge, Higgs. And he was a good mate of mine, Roy. He's a wonderful person to me. And I said, and you've told me this is ordinary. I said, so that's given me a lot of confidence. Wow. So anyway, I jumped on him in the Dalgety on the Saturday before, and I ran second to Bohemian Grove. Yeah. And I came in to Robert Sangster, and Robert Sangster, he paid a terrific accolade to the Melbourne Cup because after the race, Bohemian Grove won the Melbourne Cup, won the Dalgety. Okay, yep. I ran second on the Saturday. and that's what they call the barrier trial, more or less. It's just getting ready for the cup. And I came in, because everyone, as you know, Greg, everyone goes to the winner. No one goes to the second place.
Yeah,
the same with footy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the premiers just stand here, and the losers, well, they can go back in the room, can't they?
Yeah. You're the first loser.
Robert Sangster went to Bohemian Grove, and he said he's talking to Mickey Mallion, and Mickey was a great rider. And he came over to me, he said, "What do you think of your horse's run, John?" I said, good. I said, "I tell you what," I said, "you win the Melbourne Cup Tuesday." Wow. And he said, "Bohemian Grove?" I said, No. I said, "That horse will never beat this horse ever again in its life." He said, "You mean it?" I said, "Yep." And anyway, we went into the Cup on the Tuesday, wow. And I've told Robert Sangster this, and this is how sometimes look before you leap. And I said to Robert Sangster, I said, "You win the Melbourne Cup Tuesday." So we went upstairs and had the barrier drawer. Yeah. And I drew 24.
That stinks.
That's nearly out in the car park.
Oh no!
And when I come out,
I think I was barbecuing you there.
I reckon. I tell you what, I had to start thinking, because the press were there, and they heard what I said to Sangster. Yeah. And Robert said, "You still think it?" I said, "Yeah." And I walked away, and Tony Burke was there. Tony said, he said, "You got a bit of pressure on you now, son." He said, "You've declared this to Robert Sangster, and you've drawn 24. I said, "I've got no pressure at all, Tony." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because if I get beat," I said, "I'm going to blame the bad barrier draw." I had an excuse before I went out. Yeah, I had a
little excuse.
It was there.
It was beautifully, yeah.
But then after the race, it's funny how opinions changed, because we were in the mounting yard doing the interview after the race and the presentations, and Robert and then Colin Hayes got up, and CS got up, and he said, he said, "My first Melbourne Cup," he said, "how great it is, and for John to ride this horse," he said, "I always told him he was a good horse."
Is that right?
And I said, "CS."
Just a couple of boys from Semaphore. Isn't that fantastic?
It was great. We've just come from, because, Greg, and you'll see it in different sports, some get left with a silver spoon in their mouth. Yeah. But Colin Hayes had to go up from putting his engagement money on a horse. He was getting engaged to Betty, and he put the money on a horse so that they could get married. Yeah. And then you see other trainers that just come along from nothing, and yet you see other trainers that they get handed.
It's all different walks of life. I know we spoke about last interview. We had your 3 wins of the Adelaide Cup, your Victorian Derby, Australian Cup, your couple of Melbourne Cups, your Epsom Handicap, plus 2,000 wins. What's your best win? What's one race that you think, it might not have a title like those particular races, but one you walk away and you think, that was something very, very special, and I'll always remember that race. It might be, in a place not like the Melbourne Cup, but it might be the Melbourne Cup. Yeah. But
it's an interesting one, Greg, because I have got one favourite race that I won, and it was on a horse called Red Camellia. Yeah. And it was at Cheltenham, and I'd had a bad smash at Gawler, and I broke my neck in a smash at Gawler, and I had spent 6 months in Royal Adelaide, and I came back, and when Jimmy Johnson left here, he was the punter's pal. Yeah. And when Jim left, I took that mantle. Yeah.
And you're very good to me. Yeah. You're very, very good to me. A couple me and Craig Bradley got to talk to you about, but the 4 races beforehand, they were very, very good to us.
I took, I took that mantle from Jimmy, and, I rode a horse called Red Camellia, my first ride back from that fall, that bad smash, and this was about 7, 8 months later. Yeah. And I had my first ride back at Cheltenham, and I won on it. Yeah. And when I came back in, I think it's the only time that I have ever had tears in my eyes at a racetrack. Yeah. Because the public were there. Yeah. It wasn't me. Yeah, it wasn't the horse. Yeah, yeah. But it was them, and they. Just the occasion. It was just like saying, you haven't been away. Yeah. And Red Camellia.
Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. Isn't it funny?
And that was just such a feeling that day. That was just a feeling of, elation. I just thought, this is what it's all about.
Well, you've given us so much elation, well over 2,000 times, and what an incredible career. And the boy from Semaphore, it's just, it makes me very proud being a Port Adelaide person and a South Australian and an Australian of what you've done for South Australia and the industry worldwide. I'm so honoured that I've had to be able to interview you twice.
That's right.
which has been absolutely wonderful. It really has
Fantastic,
been. I know you do lots of stuff at the, what you're doing continuously for the sport is amazing, and we all know that. But what you've done for the sport and to share some of those stories, it's very special for me. Really, really is, and thank you very, very much.
It's been a pleasure being here, Greg.
The great Johnny Letts really is fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. It's brilliant. I think I got through most of my questions. I reckon I could speak for another 20 minutes. I really, really certainly could, and we'll catch you after the break.